Most people spend their lives protecting themselves from the wrong threats. They watch out for the loud ones, the aggressive ones, the people who criticize them openly, argue with them publicly, or seem visibly jealous. They build walls against those they know don't like them. But here's the disturbing truth almost no one talks about. The most dangerous person in your life is almost never the one who hates you openly. It's the one who smiles the most warmly, the one who calls themselves your biggest supporter, the one who shows up when you need them, but somehow, always, leaves you feeling slightly smaller than when they arrived. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote that the snake that cannot shed its skin must die. Most people never apply that idea to relationships. They stay loyal to people who are quietly draining them, not out of love, but out of fear. Fear of confrontation. Fear of loneliness. Fear of being wrong about someone they trusted. Carl Jung called it the shadow. The part of human nature we refuse to see, not just in ourselves, but in the people closest to us. And the ancient Stoics warned that the greatest threat to your peace is never the enemy standing in front of you. It's the hidden assumption you carry inside, the belief that people who are near you must wish you well. In this video, we're going to uncover the 7 behaviors that reveal the most dangerous person in your life. Not to make you paranoid, but to make you powerful. Because the moment you can see clearly, no one can manipulate what you can no longer be deceived by. You'll notice it in the details. When something goes wrong in your life, they respond a little too quickly, a little too enthusiastically. They lean in. Their eyes brighten. They say all the right words. I'm so sorry to hear that. Let me know if you need anything. But something underneath those words doesn't feel like compassion. It feels like relief. Most people mistake this behavior for concern. After all, they're showing up, right? They're calling, texting, listening. It looks like loyalty. It looks like friendship. But what it actually is something far more psychologically complex. Nietzsche called this phenomenon Schadenfreude, the quiet pleasure one takes in the suffering of another. But Nietzsche went deeper than most people realize. He argued that this isn't a flaw found only in bad people. It's a symptom of a specific kind of wound. It appears in people who have buried their own ambition, who have made peace with smallness, and who now unconsciously need you to be small too, because your success reminds them of their own unlived life. This is what makes it dangerous. Because they don't know they're doing it. They genuinely believe they care about you. And that sincerity makes them convincing. It makes you doubt your own instincts. Think about the friend who always has a reason why your new idea won't work. The family member who brings up your past failures at every gathering. The colleague who seems genuinely fascinated by your mistakes, but slightly uncomfortable around your achievements. They aren't your enemy. They are something more complicated than an enemy. They are a mirror of their own unlived potential. And unconsciously, they need you to confirm that staying small was the right choice. The memorable insight here is this: the person who loves your suffering is always more dangerous than the person who hates your success openly. One is honest, the other is invisible. Pay attention to how you feel after certain people compliment you. Real praise elevates you. It gives you energy. It reminds you of what you're capable of and sends you back into the world with more confidence than you had before. But there is a specific type of compliment that does the opposite, and most people never identify it because on the surface it sounds positive. You're so brave for doing that. I could never. You're so much more confident than me. I wish I didn't care what people thought. You're honestly amazing for being able to handle all that. I'd fall apart. Do you hear what's happening in these statements? On the surface, they look like admiration. But underneath, they are comparative diminishments, disguised as praise. Every single one of them subtly positions you as abnormal, as someone who doesn't feel what normal people feel, as someone slightly outside the range of the relatable and human. Psychologists call this the backhanded compliment. But the deeper truth goes further than rudeness or passive aggression. Carl Jung understood that the human psyche rarely acts with straightforward malice. What masquerades as praise is often the ego defending itself. By framing your confidence as abnormal, by calling your ambition brave in a way that implies recklessness, they quietly reassert that the safer, smaller path, their path, is the normal one. The real-life version of this is everywhere. You lose weight, and someone says, "You look amazing. I couldn't be that disciplined. I actually enjoy food." You launch a business, and someone says, "That's incredible. I'm too risk-averse to ever do something like that." You speak up in a meeting, and someone says, "I admire that about you. I'm too empathetic to be that direct." Each compliment is a knife wrapped in silk, and the most dangerous part? They leave you doubting yourself without ever giving you a reason to defend yourself. Because what are you going to say? "Thank you, but that felt like an insult." That makes you seem paranoid. It makes you seem ungrateful. And they know that. Even if they don't know they know it. The Stoics taught us to examine not just what is said, but what effect it leaves behind. If a compliment consistently leaves you feeling questioned rather than confirmed, trust that feeling. Your body is a better lie detector than your conscious mind. Notice the pattern of their timing. When you're in pain, when you're confused, when you're rebuilding, when you're at your most uncertain and exposed, they appear. They answer your calls immediately. They make time. They're present, warm, generous with their attention. But watch what happens when the tide turns. When you get the promotion, the relationship, the breakthrough, the recognition you've been working toward. Suddenly they become harder to reach. They're so happy for you, but they say it in a text, a short one, and the conversation moves on quickly. This is not coincidence, and it is not cruelty. It is psychology. Arthur Schopenhauer wrote that humans are driven by an invisible force he called the will, a deep, unconscious hunger for significance, for relevance, for a role in the story. And the most powerful role, the one that gives people the greatest sense of meaning, is the role of the helper. When you are struggling, they are needed. They are wise. They are important to you. The relationship has a clear structure that feeds their sense of worth. But when you are succeeding, that structure collapses. You no longer need them in the same way. And their unconscious response is distance, because proximity to your success, without a role in it, feels psychologically threatening. You see this in friendships that survive your difficult years and dissolve quietly in your good ones. You see it in romantic partners who were endlessly supportive while you were lost, but became cold and critical the moment you found yourself. You see it in mentors who were generous with advice when you were beneath them, but grew competitive the moment you approached their level. Nietzsche called this the will to power, and he didn't mean it in the brutal, domineering sense. He meant that every human being is quietly, constantly negotiating their place in the hierarchy of meaning. The person who needs your suffering needs it because it gives them a position, a reason, a sense of their own irreplaceable value, the insight to carry with you. Be cautious of people whose energy toward you is inversely proportional to your joy. Consistency is the signature of genuine love. Inconsistency is the signature of something else. There is a specific kind of intimacy that exists between people who have known each other through pain. When someone has been present during your worst moments, when they know the things that broke you, the fears you carry, the places where your confidence is thinnest, that knowledge creates a bond. It creates trust. And that trust is one of the most precious things one human being can offer another. But in the hands of a certain kind of person, that knowledge becomes a tool. Not always consciously, not always cruelly, but systematically. You'll notice they bring up your past pain at strange moments, in conversations where it isn't relevant, when you're making a decision that doesn't involve the wound at all. They remind you of the time you failed, the relationship that destroyed you, the version of yourself you've been working to outgrow, and they frame it as care. I just don't want you to get hurt again. I know how badly that affected you. I'm just remembering what happened last time. But Marcus Aurelius wrote something that cuts through this perfectly. He said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The people who genuinely want you healed will support your growth beyond your wound. The people who need your wound will quietly keep pointing you back toward it. Because here is the psychological truth underneath this behavior. Your wound is familiar to them. It's predictable. It makes you manageable. A healed, confident, self-trusting version of you is a version of you they can no longer easily influence. So the wound must stay open, not through cruelty, but through the 1,000 small reminders that keep it from closing. Think about the parent who still references your childhood failures when you're 35 years old. The friend who always brings up your worst relationship when you seem to be moving on. The partner who knows your insecurities and periodically, almost accidentally, presses exactly those points. Your healing threatens their control, not because they are evil, but because your dependence is the architecture of the relationship itself. The truth that sets you free is this: the right people celebrate your scars as proof of survival. The dangerous ones treat your wounds as a leash. Growth is supposed to be celebrated, but spend enough time around certain people, and you'll begin to notice that your evolution triggers something in them that looks and feels remarkably like resentment. Dressed up as concern, you decide to eat better, and they take it personally. You cut back on alcohol, and they make jokes that carry a little too much edge. You start waking up earlier, spending less time in old routines, investing in yourself, and instead of encouragement, you receive subtle but persistent friction. You've changed. Said not warmly, but as an accusation. You think you're better than us now. Said as a joke. But jokes are the coward's honest opinion. Remember when you used to be fun? Said as nostalgia. But what they mean is, remember when you were more like me. Carl Jung described this dynamic with remarkable precision. He understood that when one person in a system begins to individuate, to become more fully themselves, more conscious, more self-directed, it disturbs the entire system. Because relationships, families, and friend groups create an unconscious contract, a shared identity, an agreed-upon ceiling. And when you start to rise above that ceiling, you don't just change. You become a question mark, an implicit challenge to everyone who hasn't moved. Your growth asks, silently and without malice, if you can, why haven't I? The dangerous person isn't the one who openly opposes your growth. Those people are easy to see and easy to walk away from. The dangerous one is the person you love, who makes your growth feel like a betrayal, who weaponizes your loyalty, who makes you feel that becoming more is somehow a form of abandonment. And the insidious power of this is that it works on good people. People who care. People who don't want to hurt anyone. People who mistake guilt for love and stay comfortable when they should have been growing. The Stoics had a word for this clarity of purpose. Telos, your highest function, your truest direction. And they taught that no relationship worth keeping will ask you to abandon your telos. Anything that does is not love. It is possession. I'm just being honest. 4 words that have given cruelty a respectable disguise for centuries. The person who does this is perhaps the most sophisticated of all the types we've discussed, because they've found a way to harm you using the vocabulary of virtue. They frame their attacks as truth-telling. They call their cynicism wisdom. They present their undermining as the rare and uncomfortable service of a true friend. I just think you should know what people are saying. I care about you too much to not tell you this. Someone has to be honest with you. And the moment you feel hurt by what they've said, they pivot immediately to making you the problem. You're too sensitive. You can't handle the truth. You don't want real feedback. You just want people to tell you what you want to hear. Nietzsche identified this behavior as one of the most corrosive forces in human social life. He called it ressentiment, a specific psychological state in which deeply repressed envy and powerlessness transform themselves into a moral framework. The weak person, unable to compete, rewrites the rules. They make smallness a virtue. They make caution wisdom. They make limitation realism. And they deliver all of this in the tone of someone doing you a favor. The real-life version is the friend who always plays devil's advocate on your ideas, but never on their own. The family member whose honesty only ever flows downward, toward your risks, your dreams, your choices, never upward toward their own. The colleague who CCs your manager on a minor error while staying silent about their own. Genuine honesty is consistent. It holds itself to the same standard it holds others. It comes with warmth, with context, with care for the impact of the words. What masquerades as honesty in the mouths of dangerous people is selective, targeted, and always happens to land on the exact places where you are most vulnerable. The insight to take with you: the person who is genuinely honest with you will make you feel challenged and supported at the same time. The person using honesty as a weapon will leave you feeling challenged and alone. There is a final pattern that ties all of the others together: the person who never accepts responsibility, whose narrative, no matter how the situation begins, always ends with them suffering, and you as the reason. You set a boundary. They frame it as rejection. You choose your own path. They call it abandonment. You succeed. And somehow, your success is described as a subtle form of aggression against them, as you leaving them behind, as you thinking you're too good. Carl Jung spent decades studying what he called the victim archetype. Not the genuine victim of real suffering, but the person who has made victimhood a permanent psychological identity, a lens through which all of life is filtered, a role that cannot be surrendered because it provides something nothing else has been able to give: moral authority without effort, sympathy without vulnerability, power without accountability. The psychological mechanism is devastatingly clever. By positioning themselves as the permanent sufferer, they make you permanently responsible. And because you are a person with empathy, because you care, because you don't want to be the cause of someone's pain, you contort yourself. You make yourself smaller. You apologize for things you didn't do. You give back power you earned, because holding it feels cruel. And they never ask you to do this directly. They never manipulate you with obvious demands. They simply suffer, visibly, consistently, in ways that your choices seem to cause, until you learn, unconsciously, to make yourself invisible in order to keep the peace. Nietzsche warned that the morality of the suffering is the most seductive trap of all, because it speaks in the language of compassion. It asks you to be kind. And you want to be kind. But there is a difference between kindness and surrender. There is a difference between compassion and self-erasure. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." A good person has boundaries. A good person does not amputate themselves to make others comfortable. A good person can love someone and still refuse to accept responsibility for the narrative that person has built around them. The dangerous truth is this: the eternal victim doesn't want to be rescued. They want to remain in the story, and they need you to remain in your role as the one who could have saved them but chose not to. Because that story gives them power, and that power is the only currency they know how to earn. Now let's go deeper. Why do people like this exist? Why do they behave this way? Are they simply bad people? The answer, as uncomfortable as it is no. Most of the people we've described in this video are not conscious villains. They are not sitting alone at night, plotting how to diminish you. They are, in their own minds, the hero of their story. Often, the wounded one, the overlooked one, the one who never got what they deserved. And that is precisely what makes them dangerous. Conscious cruelty can be confronted. You can name it. You can reject it. You can walk away from it without guilt. But the wound that you cannot see, in someone whose suffering is real, whose love for you is also real, whose damage runs so deep they cannot see it themselves, that is something far harder to navigate. Carl Jung believed that every human being carries what he called the shadow, the parts of the self that were rejected, shamed, buried, or never allowed to develop, the ambition that was laughed at, the sensitivity that was called weakness, the greatness that was told it was arrogance. And when those parts of the self go unexamined, they don't disappear. They go underground. They transform. They emerge in behavior that looks like love, but operates like sabotage. The person who undermines your success isn't celebrating their own smallness. They're mourning their own buried bigness. And they don't know how to do anything but point you back toward the cage they once accepted for themselves. The Stoics understood this, which is why they preached consistently. You cannot change another person's inner work. You can only do your own. You cannot heal someone else's shadow by shrinking your own light. You can only remain sovereign over the one territory you were ever given dominion over: yourself. Understanding this doesn't make you cold. It doesn't make you unforgiving. It doesn't mean you love people less. It means you stop being surprised. And it means you stop being controlled. So what do you actually do with this knowledge? Here are 5 responses that come not from anger or paranoia, but from the grounded, unshakable sovereignty the Stoics called apatheia, the freedom from being moved by what was never truly about you. First, observe without reacting. When you notice these patterns, the most powerful initial response is silence, not cold silence, not punishing silence. The silence of someone who is watching clearly and choosing not to be destabilized. You don't need to correct them, confront them, or announce that you've seen through the dynamic. Simply see it. See it for what it is. That internal clarity is the foundation of everything else. Second, protect your energy like it is the most valuable resource you own, because it is. Every hour spent justifying your ambition to someone invested in your smallness is an hour your mission didn't get. Boundaries are not walls. They are not cruelty. They are the honest acknowledgement that your attention is finite and your direction matters. Third, do not over-explain yourself. This is perhaps the hardest one. When someone questions your choices, misframes your motives, or subtly diminishes your progress, the instinct is to explain, to justify, to make them understand. Resist it. The person who needs you to explain your growth is not confused. They are inviting you into an argument you cannot win, because the argument was never about the facts. Fourth, choose your inner circle with the same seriousness you would choose a business partner. The people who have access to your dreams, your fears, your developing self. Those people are not simply friends. They are architects of your internal environment. Choose architects who build upward, The price of the wrong audience is your potential. Fifth, return always to your mission. Nietzsche's highest human concept was the Übermensch, not a superhuman, but a person who creates their own values, who remains oriented toward their highest purpose despite the gravity of other people's smallness. Your mission is your anchor. When the social noise gets loud, the mission is what silences it. Not because you are indifferent, but because you are oriented. There is a reason these dynamics feel more intense, more confusing, and more exhausting in the modern world than in any previous era. We live in what psychologists are now calling the comparison crisis, a state of near-continuous social evaluation that has no historical precedent. For most of human history, you compared yourself to your village, your tribe, the people you could actually see and know. Today, you compare yourself to millions of curated realities simultaneously, and so does everyone around you. The result is a population of people experiencing chronic social anxiety, status insecurity, and identity fragility at a scale that would have been unimaginable to Marcus Aurelius or Nietzsche. The very platforms designed to connect us have industrialized the human insecurity that drives these dangerous dynamics. Social media has given envy an audience and given comparison a constant feed. It has made other people's highlight reels the baseline against which ordinary people measure the entirety of their lives. And people who cannot reconcile that gap, who cannot make peace with the distance between who they are and who they see, become exactly the kind of person this video has been describing. The attention economy profits from your insecurity. It profits from your comparison. It profits from the anxiety that keeps you scrolling, consuming, measuring, and it profits equally from the quiet resentment it cultivates in the people around you. This is not cynicism. This is the honest assessment of the environment we are all navigating, which means emotional intelligence is no longer optional. It is survival. The ability to read beneath the surface of behavior, to understand the unconscious motivations driving the people closest to you, to remain sovereign in an environment specifically designed to destabilize you. These are the essential competencies of the modern age. Jung was decades ahead of his time when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." The same is true for the relationships in your life. Until you see them clearly, they will shape you invisibly, and you will call it bad luck, or wrong timing, or the mystery of why things never quite work out. Let's close with the truth that matters most. You are not paranoid for noticing these patterns. You are not cold for protecting yourself from them. And you are not unkind for choosing a different inner circle. There is a version of you that existed before the world decided who you were supposed to be, before someone told you that your ambition was arrogance, before someone made your healing feel like betrayal, before someone dressed their envy in the language of concern and called it friendship. That version of you never fully disappeared. It has been waiting, beneath the noise, beneath the doubt, beneath the accumulated weight of every person who needed you small, for permission to become what it always was. Nietzsche wrote, "The higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly." This is not a reason to fly lower. This is a reminder that altitude has a price, and that price is occasionally the company of people who made their peace with the ground. You will lose some relationships as you grow, not because you became worse, but because you became more. And the people who needed your diminishment to feel comfortable will quietly fall behind. That is not tragedy. That is evolution. Marcus Aurelius, ruling the most powerful empire in the world, still wrote to himself each morning, "Do not indulge in dreams of what you lack. Count the blessings you have." He was reminding himself that the sovereign life is not the life with the most approval. It is the life with the clearest direction. The most dangerous person in your life is not always obvious. They may be someone you've loved for years, someone who has been genuinely kind in other seasons. someone whose wound is real, even if their behavior is harmful. See them clearly, not with hatred, not with contempt, but with the rare and powerful gift of honest perception. Because the moment you can see clearly, you are no longer at the mercy of what you cannot see. And that, as the Stoics, as Nietzsche, as Jung all understood in their different ways, is where freedom begins. Not in the absence of difficult people, but in the sovereignty you carry into every room they're in.